Well, it's been a few weeks, but we're happy now to welcome back one of our most popular columnists, I think, to the show, Kelly Graves. Kelly uses his training in psychology to help organizations improve in management and interpersonal communication. And his latest article, Us versus Them, Inc., you can see it right there, appeared in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. Kelly, is again, he really talks about psychology. It's a good opportunity to look at organizational structure in a different way. And in this one, we're talking about organizational infighting and how it can be destructive. And basically, we talk about what that us versus them philosophy is responsible for, even more than competition or organizational losses. What it's responsible for is really causing losses in an organization. So, Kelly, we're joined now by you. Thank you for being on with us.
Great to be back.
Hey, Kelly, nice to see you again. All right.
Thank you. All right, so tell us about that. So tell us why organizational infighting, as you said in your piece, is more destructive than other businesses or even market forces in terms of maybe hurting organizations.
It's the case that when you have infighting, I've been in meetings, for instance, I'll give you an example. I've been in meetings where the CEO says, we want to do X, Y, and Z, and you can tell on the people's faces it's like, no, not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. Engineering and say marketing are going to argue, and they're not going to follow that. And so you have this finger pointing, this envy for the other department or the other people. Maybe they slighted you 3 months ago or 6 months ago. They didn't support your project. So it doesn't matter if this project is better for the organization, you're going to slight them back. And so you have this envy and this chaos. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I see with 90+% of my clients is that you just have this infighting instead of let's focus on what's out there and not us.
Yeah, conflict, right? I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. Right. You what I like about your writing always is that you're very balanced in what you present, and in this one, you offer a balanced look at conflict because conflict isn't always all bad, right? I mean, right. Conflict can be good. How can conflict be good in an organization?
It could be good because when people are in conflict, all they're doing is trying to communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. They're just not very good at it, okay? And so if you look at communication as not a good or a bad thing, or if we look at conflict as not a good or a bad thing, it's really just somebody's attempt to try to get their point of view across. And so if you break it down in terms of what kind of conflict are we having? Is this a relationship conflict between you and me as individuals, or are we at odds about how do we want to approach, a project? And that's where a lot of the challenges come in, and that's where, I put the 3 kinds of conflict: the task, what we're going to do, the process, how we're going to do it, and then the relationship. And oftentimes, when you break it down between what is the real issue here, you look closer at conflict, you can figure out that, I don't have to like you to respect the work that you do. And a lot of times I've had that happen where 2 people don't get along, and but they really respect the other's work. And so it's like, okay, we're not going to go have a beer, but still, when I give you my data, I know that you're going to do everything in your power to do your piece with that.
And it sounds like a lot of that boils down to either communication or a buildup of a culture where everybody understands what the goal is and everybody's striving for that goal regardless of whether they get along with each other or even agree on the process of how to get there. Mm-hmm. We can work with each other on getting to that goal if we all agree on what that goal is. I mean, is that part of it, is just establishing what we're trying to do?
That's a huge part of it. If, most companies are in such a hurry to get the job done today. In fact, I've had CEOs say, we don't have time to do it right. We just have to do it. And it's because they're behind the 8 ball. And so most companies, if they would get their people together and say, okay, this is our overall objective, and this is how your department's objective fits within the organization, and then this is what we need you, Dirk, to do, they would be much better off. Or for instance, if 3 of us are debating a project of some sort, how we want to approach something, I might lobby very hard for that, and people might see that and say, God, there's a lot of conflict, there's a lot of anger. And it's really not anger, it's passion. where it gets bad is when we cross the line and we start pointing fingers, or I start saying, Dirk, blah,
Right,
blah,
right.
blah. Okay. But conflict can be very good. In fact, it's necessary. When people are at odds, it doesn't mean that they hate each other. What's happened is how we've grown up, fighting with our parents, fighting with our siblings, fighting with others. Conflict, it emerges within us and it creates all this anxiety. And so as soon as somebody raises their voice, let's say we're in a meeting, somebody raises their voice, instantly I go to 8 years old when things were bad in my household.
Right,
okay?
right. Yeah.
And so I'm already rattled. So a person that was raised in an environment where there was a lot of yelling in the house, where debate was natural, they don't see that as a bad thing. They might see that as, wait a minute, debate, that's how I get my point across to you. We debate it back and forth. It's not about you and me. And so to go back to your earlier question, we have to teach people, what is debate? How are we going to approach these problems and these challenges? So what they need to do is have two conversations, one about the topic, but also how are we going to achieve the dynamic on how we're going to get along. Conflict doesn't have to be bad. And so when a CEO or whoever's facilitating a meeting, when they see a person shy off or shut down or be quiet or kind of close off in one way or the other, that's where you have to stop the conversation right then and really start talking about how are we going to solve our problems. Because if we don't get this problem solved now, it's going to manifest in everything else we do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that debate doesn't have to be personal. You can debate honestly and support your positions without casting aspersions of the other person.
Right.
Maybe you can help some of our politicians talk about that. I don't know. Maybe.
They're beyond help. That's a whole different game.
Well, but let me ask you this though, seriously. So how does a manager, in the couple minutes we have left, how does a manager who wants to encourage debate, but how does that manager know when it's turning from good conflict to bad conflict? What do you need to be aware of?
I think that, in my experience, is one, catch it quick. And so I think managers know when it's gone from good to bad. The problem is they don't already have the tools in their tool bag. And so they let it go. And they figure this is just normal. John and Sam always fight. And this is just how it is. Organizational cultures, we were talking about that just a few seconds ago. Sometimes they're just argumentative and they're so unhealthy they think this is just how life is. So what a manager can do is, one, really study conflict instead of running from it. Buy some books, study, look at my website or look at, other people who really specialize in conflict and know what it is. And it's like, instead of running from it, let's look to it. And the first thing is, just in the simple article is, are we having a task conflict? Are we having a process conflict? Or are we having a relationship conflict? Just narrowing it down between those three are going to help you talk to people through it. In fact, in my years of doing this, almost 2 decades, and I've sat in on hundreds and hundreds of people, whether it was groups or individuals, dyads that didn't like each other, and over 90% it was misperception. I thought you said this, I thought you meant it when you said it this way. And so all we need to do is really dissect the conversation and say what was really meant here. And oftentimes that frustration towards the other person is so deep that it goes back for years. And so that's where you really have to go back and figure out, okay, is this a today issue or is this, a chronic issue that we've had with us for 5 or 6 years?
They've got a history with each other, right?
Yeah, and that's usually when I get the call is, okay, we have problems and we've had these problems for 7, 8, 9 years. Now can you come? Can you come fix it? Yeah. You got 38 minutes. It's like, oh.
No problem.
Well, Kelly, thanks for joining us. We're kind of out of our time today, but we'll have you back on. We'll talk about more of these issues. It's always good talking to you and kind of rolling up our sleeves a little bit and looking at the psychological underpinnings of conflict in organizations. Always really important to look at that.
Nice to be back.